My full name's Todd Mitchell Lucas. I'm only in Houston, St. Clair. I'm a Eastern Kentucky Catholic, and I'm born in Lexington. I grew up in Ohio, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Germany. And I'm currently a clinical psychotherapist in private practice here in Eastern Kentucky. So I am a veteran, a Cold War veteran, but I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder back in 87, 88. But my PTSD originated when I was 8, because of military service. I'm not service connected. I'm a veteran with a disability, not a disabled veteran, if that makes any sense. So Air Force was awesome for me. My original diagnosis was PTSD, and then down the road, I was diagnosed with high functioning Asperger's syndrome about 7 years ago or so. So those are the two disabilities that have been plaguing me most of my life. Are those two. And of course, the diagnoses are always wrong. Most of the time, I've been diagnosed with bipolar and depression and everything under the sun. But I can safely say that as a clinical psychotherapist right now, a licensed professional counselor, I can say that those diagnoses were highly irregular, highly unlikely, due to the length of time that they saw me originally to put those diagnoses on me. You can't diagnose somebody with bipolar after one visit. You can't diagnose people with that quickly. Um, the diagnoses from the clinicians that I saw that were the most accurate, I believe, are the PTSD is a no-brainer. But then the Asperger's syndrome was kind of a shock. I had seen this clinician for over a year when she ascertained that the possibility that I actually might be on the spectrum. And so she was right. I took this little test, and I passed it. If you would think that way, I look at myself as an Aspie. I don't see it as a disability, but I know they're differently abled versus disabled. I always thought that was crap until I got diagnosed with Asperger's, and I'm like, no, it's actually kind of beneficial. There's a lot of positive aspects from Asperger's that have really benefited me in my life. Of course, they've also kept me from keeping the real good jobs, but it's actually a lot of benefit to it. So I like to grab the positive aspects of it. It unlocks the door for experience. Having Asperger's and PTSD and issues like disabilities can really unlock a door for you to experience a great variety of what the earth has to offer. Meet tons of different types of people. People with disabilities, they're really no different from anyone else. A lot of people look at mental illness like, oh my God, you're crazy. But in reality, the brain is an organ, just like the heart. There's no difference between going to your psychiatrist than going to a cardiologist. Is a doctor specializing in the treatment of a particular organ making up the human body. Everybody will go through experiences of depression, trauma, crisis, post-traumatic stress. There's all kinds of issues that people will all suffer at one point in time in their life. Disability is not what it sounds like. Disability is the inability of Bob to live in a world built by Tom. So if all the Toms are going to have to be fine, but if you're born a Bob, then you're going to have a problem living in a world built by Tom. That is disability. There's nothing innately wrong with being Bob or Tom. It's just if the world is built for this particular person, then the other person's going to struggle. And my sister calls me the absent-minded professor because I forget everything. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. And the days of technology, I can actually have a phone that beeps at me when I'm about to have to do something, like eat, or have a meeting. I never walk out that front door without forgetting my keys, and so we have to work. I have to work around that. So I use a lot of technology to help me navigate without getting locked out of my house or locked out of my car or whatever. So we have a keyless entry. That's one of the things we did. It's like, oh yeah, if I put this on here, then I can forget my keys all the time. So we got keyless entries, biotechnology and all this stuff like thumbprint identification, the stuff like that I can't lose. I can't forget my hand, you know. So walk in the door, punch a little code in, open the door, get my keys, walk back out again. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. Getting along with people was the biggest issue with me. I could never The biggest part of Asperger's that affected me is my inability to read other people. But being able to talk to other people, understand where I sit, I couldn't, finding my place in the field was impossible because I couldn't see it. I couldn't read the signs. So I always constantly had to ask people. And if they will tell, if a boss doesn't tell you, or if a supervisor or a friend or a wife or a beer buddy or anybody doesn't tell you exactly where you stand in the world, and I don't know. So I would always have to ask them. And I learned how to ask them. I'll tell them now. If you're talking to an Aspie, I'm sorry, I can't read you. So you just have to tell me. If I get on your nerves, you have to say that. Otherwise, I'll never know. And if I'm doing great, you have to say that because otherwise I'll never know. So I'm usually pretty upfront with them about it now. That helps me navigate. I would get rid of the PTSD. Yeah, that's the most destructive disability I have. That's ended that's ended 2 marriages, countless jobs. The ability to sleep at night without any drugs. Without any aids. I like to just be able to sleep and not have a nightmare or a dream and just wake you up. It used to be that I would panic and then wake up in the middle of the night in a pool of sweat. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. I've grown to manage those a little better. In my own world, I had to use a lot of therapy that I actually had to create or discover myself. I discovered existentialism as an artist. I started painting my nightmares. So instead of running from it or avoiding it, I embraced it and tried to figure it out. And I started getting into a bit of existential therapy, and I learned how to reframe that into basic and life experience. So that plus some literature from people like Thich Nhat Hanh and Zen ideology. If living is good, in a nutshell, living is good, dying is bad. Therefore, any kind of emotion is proof that you exist. Therefore, any kind of emotion is good, even if it's negative. So a negative experience is better than no experience. So I started reframing that as having the privilege of being abused as a child, of having lost my daughter, or having been in a wreck, or having experienced a conflict. All of that is a positive benefit. I would like people to understand that just because people are different doesn't mean they're invaluable. In fact, and 9 times out of 10, they might be more valuable than they can perceive. Aspies are a lot of times very intelligent. Mensa, Intertel, 999, they're usually very high on the bell curve in this. And unfortunately, a lot of teachers are not. Most teachers are normal. They're right in the middle of the bell curve. But at least every once in a while, you'll have students that are well to the right side of the bell curve. And then trying to figure out as a teacher how to interact with a kid from Mensa or Intertel. How do you do that? A lot of times there's an intellectual disparity there that obviously exists, and it's exactly the opposite of the authority. And so you'll end up with conflicts. Later on, I became a teacher, and I start looking at these kids. I start noticing these kids. I can instantly tell the kids with problems at home. I can tell the kids that are intellectually superior to their own teachers. I can see these kids, and all of them are making C's and D's because all of them are ignored. They're not being taken to their full potential. The gifted and talented programs that I was exposed to, they were for the kids that made good grades. They were for the kids that were favorites of the teachers. These weren't the intellectually gifted kids. These were not the Aspie kids. I wish the teachers and the education system had it in there so that they could actually look at these kids as individuals and discover their talents and abilities and have the ability and the freedom to foster those talents and abilities. You can't do that with 25, 30 kids in your classroom. If we want our country to be progressive in the world, we have to address these things. We can't cookie cutter people. I was stubborn, and I had to make my own world, which is why I am permanently self-employed, because I am completely unemployable, because people don't like real. I don't get it. The Statewide Independent Living Council, Well, I've been trying for 56 years to live an independent life. I want to be off of disability. I've wanted for decades to get off of disability. That's not in my nature to be dependent on anybody, right? It's not my nature. So I'm dependent. Right now, I'm dependent because I'm on disability. Because I can't find a job. I can't find a job because people don't want to work with anybody with a sense of reality, you know, that calls out what they see is actually there. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining either, because I mean they're overworked and underfunded. But I talked to vocational rehabilitation. I've been to a number of different counselors. They've got their programs and they've helped me out, but they've not helped me out in the ways that I need it. If you can't throw money at it, then our government doesn't really know what to do about it. You can't throw money at Asperger's. You can't throw money at post-traumatic stress disorder. You actually have to do something about it. You know, you have to get off your butt and work with these people and help them find a niche in society in which they fit. And when you do find that niche for these people, and when they fit in it, you will be surprised at the amount of benefit these people will give you. I basically, hopefully, made the point that everybody on this planet has something vital to contribute to our society. We just have to let them do that. We don't want to throw money at their problem. We need to create a variety of earths and the farmland of this country. Not there's one type of field. The United States is like a giant cornfield, right? And the countless amount of seeds that land in that field, if it's not corn, then they don't know what to do with it. Well, for God's sakes, man, rotate your crops, man. You know, rotate your crops. Let the tobacco plant be a tobacco plant. Let the beet be a beet. You know, grow cucumbers too. I mean, we need a variety of people in this world, and in this country has all of it to offer. Don't just focus on the corn, man. I know it makes a good fuel, but you don't want to just focus on the corn. We have to let people become who they are and create those situations where they can become the best they can be. There's a lot of barriers between current healthcare systems and the patients. You know, for example, 100 years ago, it was not uncommon for a doctor to make a house call. Today, I think in some cases, I think it may even be considered unethical to make a house call. I've met people that can't leave their house. You know, I was one of those folks. I didn't leave the basement for like 5 years, and I was trying to get better. So who's going to come see me in my basement to help me get better? They can't do that anymore. They don't have time for that anymore. The system's not set up for that. A doctor working with an ASPE client or with a client with post-traumatic stress, you never know what's going to trigger them or what's going to set them off. And it's important not to handle them with kid gloves, but just to be aware of it. Just to be aware of that, aware of their capabilities. It might not be so easy for them to come in and make the appointment. Because, well, why can't you get here at 8 o'clock? Well, you're up at, you can get up at 3 a.m. and I still may not be psychologically ready to get out of the door at 8. It may take me a day or two to prepare for something like this. It takes a long time, and there's a lot of barriers between current healthcare systems and the patients. For example, 100 years ago, it was not uncommon for a doctor to make a house call. Today, I think in some cases, I think it may even be considered unethical to make a house call. I've met people that can't leave their house. I was one of those folks. I didn't leave the basement for like 5 years, and I was trying to get better. So who's going to come see me in my basement to help me get better? They can't do that anymore. They don't have time for that anymore. The system's not set up for that. I was lucky to have had clinicians to bend the rules. I'm not going to. I can't mention any names, but some of them actually did come by my house, and help me learn to reacclimate in society, to help me get out in the world again, so that I could succeed. They were client-centered. They were client-focused and not agency-focused. So I was their priority over their agency regulations and rules.
that are created 9 times out of 10 by people that have nothing at all to do with the business. You know, that's another big problem. You know, is tying the hands of the clinician or tying the hands of the physicians involved. We can't see. I can only see a client for so many minutes. Why? Who said that? Well, the agency said that. Who in the agency says that? Well, the CFO says that. He doesn't want you to see a client for 3 hours if we can only bill him for 1. That's what kind of profit margin is that going to be for my nonprofit organization? I can't not provide the client the services. It, to me, is absolutely unethical to practice medicine like they're practicing in it today. You know, it's not. I'm not blaming the doctors. I'm not blaming anybody in particular. I believe it's a system that's failed. They have a far superior healthcare program in other countries, and I don't want to compare other countries, but I've lived all over the bloody world, and I can tell you that I have never felt more at risk health-wise than I have here in the United States. If we really want to fix our system, we need to put the clients over profit, and then we're going to fix people. You know, my goal is not to see clients. My goal is the best day of my life is the day I get up and I don't have any clients show up at all. Because client number 1's out going to school. Client number 2's taking his kids to Disney World. Client number 3 is out there having a picnic with his family. They're doing it. I want to get them engaged in the world, to be hopeful for tomorrow and to actually work for tomorrow. That's my goal, not to make money. I would say to a doctor, follow your gut and follow and take the oath seriously. You know, and if that means scheduling less clients to minimize to maximize care over profit, then by all means do that. I schedule clients in 3-hour increments. So if my client needs to talk to me for 3 hours, I can talk to them for 3 hours. If they leave early, they leave early. If they want to stay late, they could stay late. I still bill for the same minimum or the same maximum amount of time, but I'm not going to not see them. You know, that's because I put my clients over my profit margin, and it's hard to do because you're going to have big tie-wearing money accountants that are going to be hounding you. You need to do this, you need to do this, or otherwise we're going to close our doors. I would suggest finding alternate means of making money if that's what it takes, because exploiting the clients is not the way to do it. A large part of my existence is advocating for other people. I was at one time in a position where I could not advocate for myself, and I got really screwed over. It's difficult to navigate a world that a person doesn't fit in very, very well. They need help on occasion to help find their niche in the world. And I didn't have a lot of advocating for me when I was younger. I had to figure a lot of this crap out on my own. Lucky me, I did. I was in the right place at the right time, met the right people, found the right books. I was able to advocate for myself. A couple of years back, I got involved with Kentucky Protection and Advocacy to help them. I ended up on their board, and I got on that mainly because of Penny, because there was a lot of service dog access issues. A lot of people don't understand service dogs, so my job as a service dog owner to help educate people. I've been disallowed access into restaurants before. I want them to not have a problem with service animals. So I had a conversation with them. I advocated for everybody with service animals. Now in that particular restaurant, if a person walks in with a service dog, they're going to be welcomed because they are educated now. I also got involved with the Stay Lucky Me. I got appointed, I was advocating for the victims of sexual assault in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I met Steve Beshear, and he heard my whole story and everything. Next thing you know, I'm a colonel. So they made me a Kentucky colonel. I'm like, wow, I did it. I helped people by telling my story. I was able to help other people in a real way. Because now lawmakers heard my story, right? I got lawmakers listening to me. Now they understand what it feels like to be a victim, what it feels like to be a victim of assault, victim of mental illness, all kinds of different victimization things. They understand it now. It's not their fault that it happened to them. And then I was nominated by Matt Bevin to be on the Statewide Independent Living Council. to make a plan for independent living. I'm like, well, that's me. That's what I'm trying for, is an independent life. So we create. I love being on that board, because that in and of itself, in theory, KP&A helps protect legal aspects of people with disabilities, making sure they're not discriminated against and such. But then the Statewide Independent Living Council takes one step above that. They're like, okay, well, now we're going to help people gain and maintain an independent lifestyle, so that they don't have to live under the dependency of the government or other people. They can live on their own. They can pay their own bills. They can earn their own cash. I got involved with the Red Cross. Well, they helped me when I was in the military. They do a lot of military work, service armed forces and stuff. So if you're deployed somewhere and you've got something in a home and you need to talk to somebody from home, they'll arrange it. And via radio, Mars, all kinds of weird stuff. But they arrange you to talk to your grandpa or whoever in the States, while you're out. And I always impressed me how a group of volunteers would get together and organize something that difficult just to benefit one guy in the military. And I thought, well, that's really fantastic. So one of the things that I did for myself to advocate for my own mental health was to get involved. So I did. I volunteered for the Red Cross. I became a disaster action team responder. And so in the event of fires, landslides, floods, any kind of disaster where people are displaced, I can show up and immediately help them through the Red Cross's disaster relief program. They do not have a bottom line. It is 100% donation funded. None of us make money. We're there, and the only priority we have is the welfare of our clientele. I love being a part of that group. And so I did well enough they gave me a beautiful trophy and put a big sign in my yard, and I'm the Volunteer of the Year, which I'm very proud of that. I love that kind of. And that also, dealing with Asperger's, that told me, that's physical evidence that I'm making a difference, that I'm doing something correctly. I'm a big one into accolades. That's not because I like to walk around with a bunch of salad on my chest. But from an Asperger's point of view, from an Aspie's point of view, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. So when I organize things or when I'm in charge of something, I tend to be the award guy. I hand out letters of appreciation all the time because I want them to have something physical in their hand. They can say, yeah, this is proof that I'm doing a good job.